for all the match strikers.
This is Spiritual Pyro.
Buckle up.
Yes, friendships, so complicated and layered, as we discussed last week. And
Yeah.
I know you as well as I received just some really interesting conversation, really insightful conversation as a result from a few people who reached out who definitely have had similar experiences to the ones that we discussed on the last episode. And even in conversations that were ongoing for you and I, kind of jumping into even just more angles and more layers that are a part of that conversation when it comes to friendship, relationship, all those dynamics. And one of the pieces that we discussed that I thought was really interesting was really that part of it where it's like, what happens when we are the ones maybe who got it wrong, who were the ones who were confronted or who really had to sit with an issue that was brought to our attention, maybe a place where we said something that was hurtful or we missed the mark or whatever it is. And I know I have those stories. I know you do too. And we all do, right? We're human. It's a piece of relationship. It's a part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. I think, almost the moment that we finished our last episode, we pushed stop on that recording, and it was like, oh, our next episode has to be the other side of that conversation. Our next episode has to be the other part of that conversation that is when we, the situations where it is our bridge to build, the times where it is ours to fix. I feel like that piece of the conversation where for me, I was able to talk about situations that weren't mine to fix. That wasn't my bridge to build. And those times are true. And, right? It's the both and. And I could feel the other side of that, the weight of those times in my own histories where the honesty and the truth telling is incomplete without that piece where it was mine to fix and it was mine to build. So I was thinking about how I had, I feel like every single episode we're like, oh, and we get this feedback and, all these conversations we're having and all of the messages we're getting. And it is true. We are getting so much good feedback and so many responses and so many messages, but it was also really telling for me to sit across a table from a really old friend of mine recently. And we were having dinner together, and it was right after that episode had aired. And someone that I've known for, going on, I'd say 25 years. And we've had a lot of friendship over a lot of years. We've seen each other through a lot of seasons. And she, we're having dinner and, we're catching up. We haven't seen each other in a really long time. And she was able to tell me how that episode landed for her. And she was sitting there saying, oh my gosh, this is exactly where I'm at. That episode, this is where it hit. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm experiencing. And it was really actually so meaningful because I don't expect everybody that I know to listen to our podcast, right? I mean, that's actually just such a treat that someone that I know is actually, following along and taking the time and happen to be listening to the most recent episode. But not only that, but for it to be something that is so tangible and so current and something that's so true and resonant for her current daily life, that was a really special part of our conversation. So yes, there's messages that we're getting, and yes, there are conversations that we're having online and through DMs and through text messages. But then there's also this real life thread that we're also experiencing with, people in our daily lives. And that was a really meaningful moment for me to just recognize that we're all walking these paths currently. We're all figuring this out in our actual real lives, right? Like, this isn't just something that we're talking about on a podcast in theory. We're not just coming up with a topic and writing out bullet points and thinking of examples of things, so that we can just bullshit our way through something. Like, these are actually things that we're trying to figure out as women walking through our relationships in real time with one another, you and I, as we have our own friendship. These are things that we navigate together. These are things that we're navigating in our friendships outside of each other. These are things that our friends are navigating in their lives. And it just was a moment where it just was a reminder that we're all just figuring it out. None of us really know what the hell we're doing. We're all just people. We're all just trying to figure this thing out together. And when we can come together and have these conversations honestly, whether it's here through these microphones or, through these podcast platforms, or whether it's across a dinner table, there is something so special about that shared honesty. So I don't know, it just felt really powerful to be able to share stories in that way. And so it felt even more powerful to be able to say the times that we've really missed that mark, the times that we've really gotten it wrong, and the times that we've had to choose to be the one to own that and to fix, to rebuild, to choose repair, all of those things that are hard, that are humbling, that take time, that take the time they take, right? So I don't know. I think it's a good, honest space for us to balance last week's conversation. And I think I'm glad that we're going to get into that today.
I think the whole idea of what do you do when you get to a point in a relationship where there's a miss, whether that's a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, a misalignment, where there's some kind of fracture or disruption that happens, and both parties are then invited into a decision, and is this something that we're going to figure out and navigate and work toward repairing or rebuilding this understanding and moving forward? Or is this a type of disruption that is sort of opening our eyes to like, oh, this just is sort of, this is the completion of this relationship, and this is the closure, and then this is the moving on in different directions. And not every time we disagree, does it mean, obviously, that that's the end of the friendship. I think that the lack of maturity in that type of perspective, obviously, isn't what leads to deep, abiding, loving connection. So for those of us who are so hungry for that deep, abiding, loving connection, the real question becomes, I think, how do we practice navigating disruption in our relationships in ways that can be honoring to us, that don't ask us to abandon ourselves or to like regress, but also are honoring to the other person, that we're in this relationship, this friendship with. And I think that's a huge piece of of growing up and into maturity, I think, as a person too, is this, how do you do that? And I think a lot of that is just through practice, and it's really scary because it's that vulnerability of like, oh, I don't know, for myself, I'm like, I don't ever want to make a mistake. I don't ever want to mess up. It's so scary to have to be like, oh shit, that's on me. Like I did that. And now there's this risk of disconnection. And so what do I do? How do I face that? How do we fix this? And it's back to what you said about what's mine to fix and what's not mine to fix. And that can be really hard to know, especially if it's new territory, if it's something that hasn't been practiced much, and I think that's something that we've talked about too, is just how it really takes the vulnerability and a courage to try, in the same way that we talk about in the last episode, the lone wolf out there howling and wanting to be found, the vulnerability and courage of that, of saying, I want to be found. In a similar way, there's the vulnerability and courage of saying, I want to fix this. I want connection. I want to repair. I want to remain. And the vulnerability of saying, and I don't know quite how to do that. And what comes to mind is what, we say, what you've said so often, and I believe it comes from Brene Brown, but that, the story that I'm telling myself, right? That language has been so incredibly helpful in so many relationships in my life, because it's almost like neutralizes the conversation. It almost invites a third party perspective where it's like, this isn't you against me. This is the story that I'm telling myself. And then I can tell that story in a way that doesn't feel aggressive or accusing or disrespectful. I don't know. It's been an incredibly helpful tool for us.
Yeah. Well, and I think also what that kind of language has done for us is it has given us an understanding that a relationship, a friendship specifically, can be so understood and so important from the jump that it needs language at the very beginning that's agreed upon, so that there are tools and that there is an agreement from the beginning that can be used and practiced in safety, so that when there is something that comes up, there is already a system in place to bring repair and to practice and to facilitate resolution. When that's already in place, then it's much less scary. When that's not in place and you don't know how to go about that in a way that both people understand, then that's really hard to navigate. So I think, Brene Brown's work has, I think, when we put that in place early on. So we're like, okay, we already know that our relationship, especially our creative work together, our friendship, it's so important that we want to make sure that we protect it from the beginning. I think can be awkward for people to do that on their own, but we knew that we wanted to protect what we have early on. And so we did that for ourselves. We did that for each other. What you say though, Sarah, about what we're talking about in terms of protecting each other and protecting communication and being willing to acknowledge when we've caused harm or when we've caused, hurt that's needing repair. Like, I don't know that I can even think about this kind of a dynamic outside of religion, because so much of how I was brought up through religious community was this desire to be right. And when it comes to belief systems, this desire to be right really bled into my relationships with other people. So this desire to be right in how I engaged with other people made it really difficult to acknowledge wrongdoing. Right? So it wasn't until I started to unravel and deconstruct my faith systems that I was really able to acknowledge and take responsibility for wrongdoing in my relationships as well. Right? So that it became so much easier to apologize. It became so much easier to soften. It became so much easier to reconcile. It became so much easier to engage relationally, in friendships, in family relationships, in every kind of relationship, when my rigidity in my religious thinking started to soften as well. And so I'm curious as to your thoughts about that as well, because, when our thinking about rightness, or our thinking about having to be on the right side of any sort of dynamic, when that filters into our relationships, it's hard to admit that we're wrong in any sense. So I'm thankful that I felt like I was deconstructing earlier, maybe than I even realized, because I needed that. I needed to be able to admit that I was wrong. I needed to be able to acknowledge when I had caused harm, or when I had hurt someone, or when I was just flat out wrong. And there were times when I was. There were times when it was mine to fix. There were times when I was the one that missed the mark. And there were times when I was the one that had to come to a friend or a family member, and I did have to do the work of apology and repair. And with someone who didn't owe me. They didn't owe me that space. They didn't owe me that open door. And I'm grateful for the times that I was given that. I'm grateful for the times that I was allowed the space to do the work of repair. So yeah, I'm curious as to how that filtered into your life in terms of religious community and rightness and being able to admit wrongdoing, all of that.
It's so interesting because I think this is a similar mirror to the way we discussed our different experiences with deconstruction and our different relationships with religion, where rightness was not really the lens that I experienced religion through. Like that, for me, it was really more about belonging and not losing that connection and being so good. Not wanting to be a problem, not wanting to cause anyone any issues. I wanted to make myself so small and so easy and so uncomplicated, and just to kind of almost like preemptively anticipate any problem, issue, need, so that I would just be the easy one in every relationship in my life. And when inevitably that didn't work all the time, then I had no skills, no development, no musculature, as you say, for how to handle that. I was just like, I have, it would just spiral me. It's like, I'm the worst. I have no worth. I have no value. I've ruined everything. There's no getting it back. Why would they even want me anymore? Like, why am I, I just 0 to 100 so fast, because that like good girl, perfectionist energy was so strong for me. And that I did inherit from my religion, but like such a different side of the same coin too. I mean, I really couldn't have cared less about if I was right or wrong. I would gladly have said, oh, right, you're probably right. Like, I probably got that. I probably missed that. You're right, you know? If it meant that there didn't have to be a problem in the relationship. And that doesn't totally match my, I do have a really strong sense of like right and wrong and what, when it comes to like justice or like this is right, this is wrong. But I think when it comes to a belief system or when it comes to a relationship, I'm much more likely to back down for the sake of the relationship, which is not healthy either. Like that's codependency, like 101. I have been through a lot of therapy. I now know that's true. I'm totally comfortable saying that. I've done my parts work. I continue to. Shout out to IFS if you don't know. But yeah, I think that what I was handed from the religion that I experienced made that a very positive way to be in a relationship, made that type of approach to a friendship the way to be. And as long as I was that way, I was rewarded with belonging. I was rewarded with connection. If you're easy, if you're fun to be around, who doesn't want to be your friend, right? And so for me, honestly, a lot of this ties back to what we write about in Skies, the beginning of Skies, when we talk about what we experienced, it really for me came down to when it became, this is right, this is wrong. I can no longer pretend I don't see that this is wrong, and I can no longer not say anything about it. Yeah. That it was another layer of me having to confront, even within my friendships at that time, am I going to continue to be the easy friend who's willing to sacrifice so much of myself in order to belong? Or now here I am and I can go this far and no further, and it's going to cause disruption that could risk the friendships, and did in many of them. In many of them, my biggest fears were realized in the loss of friendships. And I can look at it now all these years later and go, in some ways, so necessary. They were in many ways not healthy, well-developed friendships. And that lies on both parties. I'm not blaming all, of course. Sure. I mean, again, codependent, not healthy in that way. So there wasn't a well-developed, healthy friendship. And yet, you know, it's when we have a great fear realized, there's that part that's that protector part that's like, told you so. Like, I told you this would happen. If you would have just stayed small, stayed quiet, stayed easy, none of this would have happened. And you'd still belong and you'd just be fine, you know? Which is, it's not necessarily that the protector's trying to lie to us, right? It's just that it's literally trying to do its job and keep us safe. And what it understands safe as is connection and belonging, and what's worked before will keep working for you. And ourselves are the ones that can recognize reality, current reality, and say, I hear you, I appreciate you, thank you, and let me like bring you up to speed. Like, we're going somewhere new, and that is scary, but that's life, right? That's life. And I think I so appreciate in these conversations that we get to have, that we can have such different experiences and encounters with, even if we're having the conversation around deconstruction and the different ways we've experienced religion in our lives, and how many different connection points there are. Even here we are talking about friendships, and here's another connection point. This is another thing we've had to sort of deconstruct, and it's wound its way even not only into the ways we've created and sought out friendships in our adult life, but also in the ways that we've had to navigate when there's been disruption in relationships, both past and present and, you know, future, because there will be. And it's not like you and I have had a friendship where we've just floated through and it's always been easy and it's always great. Like any relationship, it's the risk is, can I risk bringing something hard? Can you risk bringing something hard? And can we do that with so much love and trust because we know we're so for each other? And I think over the years, we've just had so many years of practice, and it's been so balanced with so many other beautiful, good things that it doesn't feel like this cosmic, massive thing that to be able to discuss any disruption that comes. And I love what you said about, we did establish early on that language around the story I'm telling myself. And I think for anyone who's listening or having similar conversations, I think I get curious about like what, even if you've been in a friendship for years, if you listen to this episode and you're like out to lunch with your friend and you're like, hey, what if we just tried introducing this into our friendship moving forward? Like it could be an incredibly helpful tool, and it's okay if it's not been something that you've been introduced to until right now, right? I think there are things that we've brought into our friendship over the years that have only helped it grow and become more rich and dynamic and healthy. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, thank goodness, right?
One of the things that I think we've also released is this idea that forgiveness is the pinnacle, right? So when it comes to our relationship, I know that for me, I've set that down in a way that I used to hold so tightly to within religion, because forgiveness was this idea that was so transactional. And I know that you and I have really embraced more of this idea of repair. And I think that's something that we
I just
both
need to
come
say,
to.
I'm interrupting you really quick, but I'm just so happy. I'm so happy you're talking about this, because I'm like, I can't wait for you to get into this more. I was going to ask you more about this. So I'm just like sitting over here like smiling, because I'm like, yes, like say it, go. So go on.
Okay. Because if we talk about this idea of forgiveness, right? We're handed this in religion. We're handed this idea that's really this transaction between us and God, right? Where we ask God for forgiveness. God supposedly gives us forgiveness, and then whatever we did wrong, it's done. It's, we're absolved of it. We never have to think of it again. It's over and done with, That's a pretty good deal, honestly. If we ask for forgiveness and it's over and done with, sweet, right? But when we then try to engage in that with each other, human to human, it doesn't really work the same way, right? So I think that this idea of forgiveness between each other, it's a nice idea, but it's not really how our brains work. It's not really how we repair harm. It's not really how we move through relationship with each other. And, quite frankly, it's just how we've seen so much abuse take place in the communities that we come from. So I think that, when we see that used as almost a currency, when we see it used almost like absolution without accountability, when we see that expectation of like, forgiveness granted, it's finished, it's done, the expectation of no further questions, like the expectation that it's never going to be spoken of again, like that, and somehow the fault of the person who was harmed to never speak of it again, to be over it, to just wipe this slate clean, and the offender is, just granted full access again and again to the person that they've harmed. I just think you and I, especially as women, we have just seen the harm that has caused so deeply in communities, in relationship, it's been heartbreaking. So for me, it's something that in my deconstruction process, it's something that I really just had to admit that I've seen weaponized more than I've seen it be beautiful. And so it's something that I gave myself permission to set down. I think it's a nice idea, but I don't think that it's actually been as helpful as it's been hurtful. And I think that what has actually been the more beautiful and truer practice has been repair. Forgiveness has seemed transactional, whereas repair has seemed like this active practice between two people. And that has seemed like something that is engaged in on purpose. It's not easy. It takes time. It takes the time it takes. It's often really difficult and maybe it's sometimes messy. It doesn't always have a nice and shiny bow on top, right? It often requires a lot of hard work and maybe some guidance. And, it's not this easy path that looks the same way. It's not formulaic. And yet it seems to be more real. So I don't know. It's not an easy answer, but yet I feel like it might be something that's more true that we can actually like grab onto with each other.
Well,
So
what
I don't
I
know.
hear
What
you
do you think about
saying,
that?
yeah, I just love this conversation so much because I think it's so important. And I love what you touched on about accountability, because I think forgiveness is, I don't know who said this. I kind of feel like Steve said this, but I don't want to give him credit in case it's not him.
Hi,
Sorry,
Steve.
But forgiveness is a solo sport, that forgiveness is something that happens internally, that it's really not a practice between two people. It's really something that happens internally as part of our own work of moving on.
Yeah.
But that the practice of apology, I think when you're talking about repair, I think in the same way that practice of apology is really that comes from that place, I think, of respect and recognizing the ownership, the accountability of like, I caused disruption, whether it was intentional or not. I caused something I did or didn't do, caused disruption, and I feel responsibility to repair that disruption. And to me, that's what you're speaking to. And the repair is like an invitation, because the repair is where the interaction happens. It's like the repair is like the hand extended and saying, will you do this repair work with me? I want to do this work. And the apology is like, I own that I caused this, and will you work with me to repair it? Where I feel like the transactional, like, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? I forgive you. It's like, where's the repair? Where's the healing happen? It feels like you forgive and you forget. You move on.
That's like not true. Yeah,
it just isn't how it's just not real. It's not real.
Right.
And I just think it's such a fresh way to speak on something that obviously is just very old. It's part of the human condition. It's just a true part of our experience. But maybe it's really because we come from these religious backgrounds, or we have these experiences where it's just so woven in. I hadn't ever really considered separating out forgiveness from apology, like thinking about them differently, thinking about them as two different like actions and not part of the same conversation, and bringing the idea of repair into that conversation. I just think it's revolutionary. I really do. I love it so much. And as it's something that I feel like I've learned so much from you, and it's something that has really transformed the way I approach all my relationships. all my friendships. And
I think somebody asking, like, do you forgive me is like the biggest red flag. That's none of your business. Like if somebody's
say more.
Like if somebody's asking, do you forgive me? Like if somebody, like whether or not somebody is forgiving me is none of my business. That is like it's a solo sport. Like that's true. Like that is within them. That is not mine to even ask of them whether or not they forgive me. Like that is inappropriate for me to request that they give me that access. So if I've wronged someone and I'm asking them, do you forgive me? Like that's not okay.
Oh my gosh. See, that blows my mind. I just feel like from again, this is me, this is like my Christianity showing where it's like, oh, and it just speaks to the entitlement of like, oh, we're entitled to that forgiveness. We're entitled to know. Like, how aggressive is that?
Do you forgive me? Like, whoa, settle down.
Like calm
down. Back up. Okay.
But
honestly, okay, but let's talk about that for a second, because the idea of forgiveness within religious communities as women, okay, I feel like is a really activating concept, because when we are taught within religious communities to forgive, we are often, it's kind of like, I feel like it goes hand in hand with being told not to be bitter. Like if we're upset about something, we're told that we're bitter. And if we are not immediately forgiving, we are called bitter, right? So the idea of forgiveness for us, especially as women within religion, we are taught to forgive. And what that does is it immediately cuts off our sensory for pain. So we are taught to ignore our feelings. We're taught to ignore our pain. We're taught to shut down any fear, shut down our anger, shut down our instincts, shut down our intuition. Just shut it down and forgive. Well, first of all, that's not how our fucking brain works. So it's like completely ignoring the fact that like it really just isn't true or accurate, you know? So, well, we're not going to get into that. But like the idea that we're ignoring our boundaries, ignoring our survival instincts, ignoring safety, ignoring all of that. But the word ignore is never used. What word is used? Trust. Right? We're just going to trust. So in the name of trusting, which that's the spiritualization of it, right? Yeah. In the name of trust, we are taught to shut down everything that is built into us to keep us safe. And then we wonder why abuse runs rampant. And all types of abuse, not just physical, right? All types of abuse. So I just think that as women, we don't have to look very far. All we have to do is talk to each other to realize that the idea of forgiveness is weaponized against us from such a young age. So I think that for me, setting it down, I've had no desire to pick it back up.
That is so fire. One of the things that I found myself practicing as a young mom with my kids was not forcing the apology or the forgiveness. Like not the immediately being like, apologize to your sister, forgive your brother, like letting it sit. And because it's like that so quickly also becomes, in what you're saying, I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, like when you say from a young age, it's like literally conditioned since from preschool, from kindergarten. It's that say you're sorry.
Yep.
And so we're taught to detach from even feeling any accountability. We don't know what we're saying sorry for. It's performative from the beginning. Say you forgive, that detachment. And oh my gosh, you're so right. And that when you talk about the way that that's used to keep women detached from their feelings, from their power, really, and how even this goes back to like the way the body keeps score and like how it's killing us. It's killing us to not feel and to not be attached to our rage and our anger and our emotion when we've been wronged over years, over time. Yeah.
Carson, I'm not going to tell the details of the story because I don't have her permission, but she actually just last night brought up a story about how something from when she was young that she had done on behalf of her best friend that was actually in the name of safety, that I made her apologize to somebody for. And looking back, I'm horrified that I made her apologize for this because she was doing something to keep her best friend safe. And it was, I'm so embarrassed for myself. And as a young mom, I was like, oh, you need to apologize for that. And she was telling me this story and I was like, oh, what? I can't believe I did that. And she was like, oh yeah, you did. And I was like, oh, I probably did. You know, and she remembers it clear as day.
Yeah.
And I made her apologize for something. And looking back, I would have now I'm like, good job. Good job. I'm like patting her on the back for it, you know?
Yeah.
And as a young mom, I was just so like, you know, got to follow this rule or go through these steps or, you know, I don't know.
No, but I mean, even that right there is like, that's what we're
so
talking
hard.
about. Right.
Yeah.
And did you tell her that? Did you tell her, like, if I were to do it now? Like, did you say?
Gosh. I mean,
I think that's part of, like, when we talk about repair.
Yeah.
It's like, it's another practice of, it's not the story I'm telling myself. What it is like, let me tell you a better story. Let me tell you how I would do it now. And it's like, we can't rewrite, we can't fix what we did, but we can cast a vision of like what it would be like now. Like, that's so powerful too.
I have so many of those stories.
Oh, me too.
So many.
Yeah. But that's the work. And that's the thing. It's like we show up and we get to rewrite it. We get to retell it. We get to reimagine it, and not from a place of like gaslighting, you know, like it's all part of the same practice of repair. And then there's the moving forward, which is the beautiful part. Yeah.
I mean, she's a junior in college. I mean, by now, number of stories.
I can't believe that. I that feels wrong. I'm like, no, she's not. No, she's not.
I know. The girls they're all back in town and, you know, move-in weekend, everybody's back and, you know, they're all getting back into all the festivities and all the things. But yeah, I mean, by now, Sarah, the number of stories that I have had to be like, oh God, the things I would do differently. Like, she knows by now, like she knows. I am well versed in apology with my daughter. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I feel like it's so important with our kids to be able to say, oh gosh, I was so wrong. I'm so sorry. Like that's so easy for me now. And I think, you know, both of my kids know how easy that is for me to say, you know, when I've gotten it wrong and just how wrong I've gotten it, that, you know, we can laugh and cry pretty easily about those things now. And I think really I've got a good handful of friends, I think, that I can laugh and cry with about those things now. You know, I've got some pretty old friends who have seen me through some pretty brutal seasons in life where that haven't been pretty. And I feel grateful that some of them are still around. Gosh, you know who you are if you're listening to this.
Shout out to the oldies. Oldies with the goodies.
Shout out to the OGs who are still around. Sometimes I don't know why, but I'm grateful for it. So
thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for still being here. But it's true, right?
True.
True. Miley Cyrus is our patron saint. She's not sponsoring this, but she should.
She should be. Come talk to us, Miley. We have ideas. We have big ideas.
Oh, goodness. It's a beautiful thing, the power of apology. You know, I've had some significant moments humbling myself in front of some pretty incredible women who did not have to give me the time of day. And they did. And I have a different musculature because of them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It makes us stronger too. It's that it is, musculature is the right word for it, because it is a breaking down. You have to go through the vulnerability and the fear and the pain of having to say, oh, I got it so wrong and I'm so mortified, or I'm just so devastated, or whatever, and walk through that, and then walk through that repair, whatever that looks like, and whatever that needs and whatever that requires. And all of that is rebuilding and creating something stronger and more durable and more with just more ability to be flexible and to adapt. And like the next time it's not as hard. And it's like you said, talking about apology with your kids, it's like the practice of it becomes more second nature, which is the gift you're building into them. And that is the same, I think, in these friendships over time. And it's what feels so scary and so hard that also can make us so much stronger and I think more sure of who we are and as ourselves and within one another.
Yeah. So for whatever it was that made me think I had to always be right, or that I wasn't allowed to make mistakes, that I wasn't allowed to get it wrong, I don't know where I picked that up. You know, I wasn't taught that. You know, I wasn't raised in a family where I was required to be a perfectionist. I don't know who handed that to me. I can't pinpoint it, but I don't want to pass that on, right? And I think that when we talk about in skies, you know, when we talk about our lives burning down and having to rebuild something from those ashes, or when we talk about the musculature that we have, I think that it feels so good to acknowledge that it only comes from having gotten it so wrong. It only comes from having missed those marks or made those mistakes, or, you know, having made those wrong decisions, or having, fumbled our way through, having been broken down and having to figure out how to build that back up. Like it's not been pretty. And I think that's, I don't know. It's why it is so true, because it's been such a hard fought story. So I don't know. I think, you know, it's easy to talk about friendship on the one side, only because we can also talk about the loss and the mistakes made on the other side too. It's got to be the whole picture. It's got to be both sides of the coin, or it doesn't mean anything, right?
Yep. One without the other isn't as true.
You've been listening to Spiritual Pyro with Sarah Carter and Corinne Shark on the 1C Story Network. For more information about this and all of our stories, please visit just1c.com. That's JUSTONEC.com.
Now that we've covered that,
moving on.
The 1C Story Network, for the love of stories.